Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are driving the brand new Peugeot e-208. Now the 208 was crowned European Car of the Year in 2020. I know that doesn't mean much for most of you, especially since 2020 has been a dead year for the automotive industry and sales have plummeted, but this is a really good car, and I had the chance to drive it with internal combustion engines in the past, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. It's very quirky, it looks very good, the interior is very well made, and it's a really good car. I mean, given the size it has, because there are some shortcomings to it, but I'm gonna get into that a bit later on. Today we are driving the electric version of the car, and the PSA group decided to launch a series of electrified cars, full EVs, based on the same platform shared with internal combustion engine models. Now, this makes the 208 a rather special car in the world right now because it's one of the few that is offered with all types of drivetrains. It comes with petrol engines, it comes with diesel engines, and now it comes with an electrified powertrain. So from the outside, you won't be faulted for not being able to spot an electrified 208 compared to an internal combustion one, because there are very slight changes to the design, the exterior design of this car compared to a regular model, so to speak. So from the outside you will notice, but you will have to look very carefully. You will notice that the Lion, that's the Peugeot brand, the Lion up on the center grille up front has a couple of blue details on it, and that tells you this is a electrified car, because all electrified cars in the PSA range have some blue details here and there, and in this case it is the Lion, the badge up front, that has some blue inserts in it. The same color can be found on the letter E that has been stuck on the C-pillar, and that straight away tells you this is an electric model. Also, around the back you will notice that the tailgate has the e-208 badge, and that there are the tailpipes missing. So no tailpipes at the back whatsoever. So those are the dead giveaways that this car is an electric model. So it's an electric 208. The thing is, depending on the market, you could get it in a different version. So in this local market where I'm testing the car, the 208 is only offered in GT line spec. Basically, you get a full option car. You don't have to tick on anything else, and that's what you get. On other markets, though, that's not the case. So you could get an Allure model or an Accent one, and so on. It depends from market to market. And in this case, since it's a GT car, you have a GT badge on the boot as well, the tailgate. And that's about it in terms of exterior design changes. Now, the 208 still has that incredibly nice looking exterior. You have those fangs up front and the three lines, LED lines in the headlights that give it a aggressive stance, and a very cute one too, because unlike its bigger brother, the 508, the 208 may have the same exterior design up front, but it definitely doesn't look like it means as much business as the 508 does. So inside the cabin, the same story applies. Everything looks exactly the same. You have the same piano style shortcuts over here. You have a big infotainment screen, and of course the iCockpit digital instrument cluster. So everything looks the same. There's really not much to talk about inside in terms of differences compared to a regular 208. There is one big difference though, which is the fact that the batteries are slid under the floor. So they do take up some of the space, but not for the occupants per se, but in terms of legroom. Now, there is a slight bump over here right in front of the seats that comes from the fact that the batteries are stored under the floor. And that might not even be noticeable by people with shorter legs, because they will have to slide the seat up next to the bump. But for me, since I have longer legs, I have to slide the seat backwards a bit. And when I try to retract my legs, whenever I'm not using the pedals, I'm sitting at a stoplight or something like that, I can't really retract my legs fully, and that can get tiresome on longer trips. But otherwise, the space inside is roughly the same as it is on an internal combustion engine. And that's a good job done by the engineers and the designers from the PSA group. In the back, I really don't fit. That's something I noticed on the regular 208 too, because if you have someone of my size, I'm 6 feet tall, about 250 pounds. So if you have someone of my size up in the front seat and you're trying to sit in the back and you're just as big as I am, so two people of my size wouldn't fit in this car, one in the back of the other. So if you have smaller people to carry around, like kids or just smaller people, that might not be an issue. But the space is rather limited in the back. After all, this is a small car, so you really couldn't ask too much of it in this regard. So other than that, the car is pretty spacious. You get plenty of room up front. You can fit like regular sized people. I'm not talking about Shaquille O'Neal here. He would probably not fit in this car, but he has issues with all sorts of cars anyway. So regular people would fit in the front easily. As for the back, as I told you, things are a bit cramped. The same goes for the boot. It's a small boot, it's a small car. Just get used to it. You're not buying an SUV here. If you want to, there's an electric 2008 SUV from Peugeot, which has considerably more room, and the prices are slightly different. So I think that's a better proposition, but I'm gonna talk about that later on. Now, let's talk about the technical side of things. So as I said, the Peugeot group decided to create electrified cars on the same platform as its internal combustion ones. So this car shares everything under the floor and every underpinning with its regular brethren. So no huge changes there. The suspension has been slightly reinforced because the car is heavier than the rest of the models. So whereas the regular 208 would be like 1200 kilos, 1300 kilos, this one is over 1500, so it's a bit heavier. But even the suspension, even with the suspension being reinforced, this car is still comfortable. The suspension is actually very subtle, very, very good. It damps the imperfections in the road very well, and I really can't complain. I've seen other cars doing the same trick. For example, the Mini Cooper SE is also a car developed on the same platform as the regular Mini, and it has the added weight of the batteries and the electric motor and so on. But the ride in a Cooper SE, the electric version, is a lot worse than in a Cooper S, and that's because the suspension had to be substantially reinforced to keep up with the added weight. And it nearly ruined the ride of the car, but it's not the case here. This is a very well damped car, and I like it a lot. So let's talk about the engine and the batteries. Under the hood, we have a 136 horsepower engine. It's a 100 kilowatt engine, whatever you want to use as a measurement. Under the floor, we have a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. Out of those 50 kilowatts, you can only use like 45 kilowatts. That's the case with every single battery on an electric car on the market today. You usually have a buffer, a 10% buffer on board in order to protect the batteries and make them last a bit longer. So there's about 45 kilowatts of usable power. That means the autonomy of this car, the range of this car, is going to vary a lot depending on how you use it. I'm pretty sure Peugeot meant this car to be used around the city because it's small, it's compact, you can park it everywhere, it's easy to drive around town, you have this very light electric steering and so on. So they meant it to be used in the city. So during my time with the car, I saw an average consumption that allowed you to cover about 260, 280 kilometers with a full charge around town. That's okay. It's really not that far off compared to the official ratings, which put this car at about 330 kilometers or 210 miles. It's decent. And it comes with fast charging capabilities, which means you can replenish this car in about half an hour. Now, Peugeot says it can take up to 100 kilowatts of power. You can use a fast charger that's rated to 100 kilowatts, and those are pretty rare, especially where I live. But I used a 50 kilowatt power charger, and I managed to get from 18% battery to 82% in half an hour using a 50 kilowatt charger. So direct current, of course. So it's pretty fast to get charged. If you want to use like a Type 2 charger, it's going to take between 19 and 4.5, 5 hours, depending on the kind of charger you're using. If you're using a 11 kilowatt, a 22 kilowatt charger, or a 7.4 one. The 7.4 ones you can get at home, and you can charge it at home, of course, overnight. That would take about 5 hours, or even more, depending on the kind of power. Now, you need to remember that when it comes to electric cars, it's not pure math when it comes to charging the cars. The last 20% always take a lot longer than the rest of the charging process, because the batteries have a tendency to heat up, and the last bit of the process needs to be slowed down to protect the car. Also, even if you're using a 50 kilowatt charger, for example, that doesn't mean you can charge with 50 kilowatts or 100 kilowatt charger. That doesn't mean you can charge with 100 kilowatts at a time, because it depends on the temperature of the battery, it depends on the cables and so on, many factors. So that's not exact science. It depends on a number of factors. So don't think that if you have a 50 kilowatt hour battery, you can recharge it using a 50 kilowatt charger in like 1 hour. No, that doesn't work in the real world. It will depend on a number of factors. But I was impressed by how fast and how much juice this car could take from the grid. Now, outside the city limits, on the highway, at speeds on average of over 75 miles an hour, around 130 kilometers an hour, which is the speed limit over here in Europe, I saw an average range of 200 kilometers. So, if you're going to do a lot of highway driving, you need to keep that in mind to make sure you don't run out of juice on the way to work or wherever you're going. So how does it drive? Well, being an electric car, a small electric car with 136 horsepower and 260 Newton meters of torque, which come about instantly, this is a very quirky and zippy car. It's really fun to drive. It gets off the line fast, and it keeps going up to its top speed of 150 kilometers an hour. And now what I noticed is that the car pulls really hard up to that top speed. Doesn't really slow down after 100 kilometers an hour, which is really nice. But once you hit that limiter, it just drops dead. I mean, 150 kilometers an hour is the maximum you can reach, and they're not kidding around. And that, comes with pros and cons. I think it's a physical limiter done by the engineers in order to protect the car, because I felt like it could go even further, but it's just limited somehow. I think it was done to protect the battery or the car or something like that. Anyway, you'll be breaking the law in most of Europe and the US if you're driving this car at those sort of speeds. So it's not really useful. What is useful though is when you're trying to overtake someone on the highway. And if you reach that limiter while you're overtaking, some, jolts to the old pumper in your chest might happen. So you might get a bit nervous. But the car is quiet, driving it around town, it's very quiet. The suspension does its work brilliantly. It keeps everything nice and even. You don't feel any annoying jolts through the cabin, and it's really comfortable, really zippy to drive, as I said, because it's a small electric car. So these are zippy cars around town. You can park it anywhere. The visibility is really good. The car is small and narrow, so you can park it just about anywhere, and it's a really great car. So what's my conclusion regarding the e-208? Well, I like it a lot. It's a fun to drive car. You have driving modes over here. You can get it in sport mode, and it's even sharper to react to your inputs. And it's a decently practical car. It's a small car, don't forget that. So you won't get the same boot as you would in a 5 Series, I don't know, a big car. But it's a really good car. I liked it a lot. The main problem it has is the competition and the pricing. It's a bit expensive, and I don't know if you're getting your money's worth. This car costs, in the configuration we have, 39,000 euros, which is a lot, and puts it in the neighborhood of cars like the new Honda E, which has a smaller range but a bigger price tag. The Mini Cooper SE, which has, once again, slightly smaller range but not by much, and is a bit less practical than the e-208. It puts it in the range of the Renault Zoe, which is cheaper and has longer range but has a worse interior and a worse suspension. So before you make up your mind, check out what kind of incentives your government is offering, because depending on the country you're in, you could get a really good price on one of these. Over here you get 10,000 euros as a discount for an electric car, so this car actually would end up being like 29,000 euros, but still, that's quite a lot for a super mini like this one. Even in electric, guys. The biggest rival for this car, though, doesn't come from other companies, but I think it comes from the PSA group as well. That's the Opel Corsa E, which is basically the same car but looks better in my book, or the Peugeot e-208, which uses the same powertrain but offers a lot more room. I tested that car a while back, and I saw that the difference in power consumption and in range is around 10% or even less. And it's only like a couple of grand more, and I think it's worth the money, because at least for me, that car has enough space in the back. I could get in the back and I could sit there comfortably for a longer trip. So that could make all the difference in the world. That being said, this has been my review of the Peugeot e-208. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share, and of course, subscribe, drop a comment. Let's talk about these really small electric cars we get on the market today. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions and take care of yourself behind the wheel. Ciao.